Thanks for joining us for the North Bay podcast, where we explore how outdoor education is reshaping the way students learn, grow, and connect with the world around them. I'm your host, Rick Garber, and in each episode, we're going to dive into the impact of outdoor schools, the challenges and successes of bringing learning beyond four walls, and the movement to make outdoor education accessible to all. Welcome to the North Bay podcast. Today, we are excited to have Catey McClary from the Great Smoky Mountains Institute at Tremont joining us. Welcome, Catey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's such a beautiful place and just, grateful to have this conversation.
Yeah. So you run an exceptional outdoor school. Why do you think all kids don't have access to outdoor school programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I'm at a place like this, we start to understand what's unique and what's similar to all of the outdoor schools that we do. At Tremont, we know that a lot of the students are faced with financial barriers. And that's something that I think is common across all outdoor schools is families can't afford it, or centers like yours that might be funded through public schools where they're, footing a lot of the bill. There's a lot of inequities for funding. I think in addition to some of the financial barriers, we know that there's cultural barriers. When we have students coming from an urban area of Knoxville to, just an hour away to the Smokies where we are,
right.
We're a predominantly white staff. And so representation is something, or a family that hasn't grown up with access to natural spaces in their environment might perceive the Smokies, Great Smoky Mountain National Park, is a place that is unsafe. And so oftentimes it's those cultural barriers. In addition, it's not just on the individual level, but we see that there's a lot of systemic barriers, historical inequities where people might have come from neighborhoods or areas that have, less access to clean air and water. And so they're spending more time indoors.
Right.
I think there's a lot of different complex factors that lead to these inequities. And it's something that we as an organization, as well as I think a coalition, are trying to really understand and see how we can address some of that.
Yeah. I think for us, we find that financial barrier is probably number one.
Yeah.
That's the biggest impediment to kids, particularly from underrepresented communities, getting outdoors, getting into outdoor school. We know these programs are important, but access is limited by finances.
Yeah. Wow.
So what's our responsibility in that? Like, how do we, as outdoor schools, as outdoor school leaders, how do we start to address that inequity?
Yeah. To go back to financial barriers, I think that's something that we do try and address, but it's something we can't do alone, So we, as an organization, look a lot about scholarships and grants and how are we bringing in additional revenue to offset those families. When we bring in a public school group, oftentimes it's the parents that are having to pay for the enrollment and the tuition. And so, how can we maybe have a sliding scale of price and cost for those students? And how do we also help those families individually? In addition to financial, it's also taking a look at us internally. When we have students coming, what is that sense of belonging they get when they come to our program? So looking at how we are being culturally relevant. Do we have programs that feel accessible? When people think of outdoors, there's often a perception that you're coming and you're doing these, hiking or these very, skill-based activities. And so for us, it's about meeting people where they are. And when they come, it may be introducing them. This is a stream. This is how you want to walk around a creek in a way to be safe.
Yeah.
So we're looking at it internally and also thinking about how are we including people in the outreach. So when we are working with our community, when we're reaching out to community partners, or when we are even marketing, what does that marketing materials look like? What communities are we reaching out to? How are we talking about our programs? Are we having it in multiple languages? So really just, what's the story we're telling and how are we trying to reach a broad audience, not just those that might, understand quicker the type of programs we offer, but those who really benefit from that relationship building and that trust building. And so spending more time within those communities to help them recognize the benefits of outdoor school, help them recognize the opportunities that they have when they come to share and co-create this experience with us.
And when you create that safe space for kids and for communities to engage in outdoor school, they have better experiences.
Yeah.
They're learning more quickly. They're developing relationships more quickly, and they get more
Yeah.
out of that experience. Thinking about some of the financial barriers, a lot of time is spent. I know at North Bay, and I'm guessing at Tremont, you spend a lot of time trying to overcome that barrier for families, for kids, for schools, that time could be spent developing those safe spaces for learning for kids.
Yeah, it's a capacity thing. When we are spending time fundraising, it takes you away from actually doing the programs. And so for us, it's an important part of what we do, and it really increases that ability for people to come and experience the magic that we say happens. So
are there any other I think responsibilities for outdoor school providers that are that we're sort of ignoring as far as creating access points?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think our responsibilities extend beyond just, treating the child when they're with us, or, treating that experience as singular, but really thinking about it in a broader societal context.
Yeah.
When we bring kids to understand nature and understand that they are a part of nature, then we're really enabling them to thrive more in their communities. And we're creating a better future. I think about the responsibility I feel when a kid comes to Tremont. And yes, it's about creating a safe place. So it's making sure that they're physically safe, but it's also about supporting them on a social and emotional level. So what is the support? Do we have trauma-informed education when we have kids who come to nature who may not have food security and they come to Tremont and they're getting 3 meals a day? Like there's a level of responsibility that I feel like we carry when we work with kids, and just making them feel safe, making them feel that sense of belonging, and taking that experience back home with them.
Yeah.
I love when we have kids who come and experience this, and we say it's transformative because we know it is. And it's about not just, hey, I learned some new things and I saw some new species that I didn't know existed, but it's about changing their perception of what's possible. And
I love that.
I do too. It's one of the favorite things because it's, when we have a kid who comes and sees the stars, we unlock this creativity and this curiosity about the world around them.
Right.
And when they take that away and they start to see, well, how else can I experience the world around me? What more can I pay attention to? What more can I notice? Then you start opening up the doors for their future. And it's extremely powerful.
Yeah. It broadens the perspective of their whole lives.
Yeah.
And as learners too. So you have some exciting projects happening at Tremont. I know that there's some plans in place for a living building, living campus.
Yeah.
I think most people don't know what that means.
No, say no.
So help us out. What are we talking about here when we talk about a living building challenge?
Well, a living building challenge, it's a way to rethink how we build buildings. I mean, quite literally. Most people are familiar with LEED buildings, and LEED buildings are energy efficient. LEED buildings are designed to have less negative impacts on the environment.
Right.
Living building is a complete paradigm shift where it's saying we don't want to do just less bad, but we want to have a positive impact.
Right.
But it goes beyond just the buildings themselves, and it's saying we want to have a positive impact on the experience. We want to have a positive impact on the community. And so it starts to go into all the ways in which when you design a space to promote connection between people, when you design a space that starts to bring the benefits of the outdoors, indoors, through natural light, that you're really designing a space intentionally. And so the Living Building Challenge, it's a performance-based certification.
Right.
It's a process that we will be going through to ensure that we're making our buildings healthy and happy spaces, that we're making our buildings, use responsible materials. There's all these different petals that go into it. And I would encourage people who are interested to find more resources about what living buildings are.
Yeah.
But for us, quite simply, it's the embodiment of our mission. Tremont works every day to connect people to nature, and we're quite literally doing that through these buildings and these places of connection that we are creating for education. So it's a really ambitious, but it's also something that has been done. Our peers at the Ecology School in Maine and Pete at Wolf Ridge have achieved this. And so we know it's possible. And it's something that I think outdoor schools are starting to question, how can we use the Living Building Challenge to be more purposeful in creating and designing these experiences for the participants. So.
Okay. So, one of the things I think about, we were just talking about the financial challenges of operating an outdoor school, of creating equity in access to the experience. Do some of these big sustainability initiatives conflict with that? Is there a conflict between the investment it takes to really create sustainable campuses,
Right.
and create access for kids?
Well, I think you're right in that these buildings do often cost more. And so, I think that's a fair question to say, well, how are you investing your finances in the way that best benefits the students? And if that's the case, and I would say it absolutely isn't in conflict. What we're actually doing is prioritizing the health and wellness through these buildings and these spaces. And when you're doing something that is sustainable, you're investing in their future too. So yes, it might cost more to actually build a building that achieves the Living Building Challenge. But for me, the value and the benefit far exceeds what you would otherwise build. So for me, I don't think it's a conflict. I think it's actually prioritizing those students and their experience and doing that intentionally with how you are building and designing these spaces.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about access and how do we get kids engaged in these experiences that we know are transformative, that we know have a positive impact academically, socially, emotionally, that kids are developing and growing into happy, healthy people in outdoor schools. So what do you say to policymakers to, I guess, help them see that and to facilitate the investment in these programs for students?
Yeah. I think simply, when we talk about it being a right and not a privilege, and saying that, this is not only a right that everyone should have, it's a rite of passage. It starts to bring together all the physical and mental and social well-being in a place. And it's something that every kid should have access to. What I would say to the lawmakers and the investors is that there's a cost to not doing this. And when we start to think about that cost and we say, well, if kids don't have access to nature and physical activities, you're going to start to see mental health illness or mental health issues, chronic illness, all of that increase. And so, for us, it's about saying this investment is a whole lot less than the cost of not doing anything. And I also think that, policymakers, investors should understand that when they choose to partner with us, it is a true partnership. We're here creating these spaces, but we can't do it alone. And so they are actually providing us with the tools that we can then leverage to really create these unique experiences. So for me, I think it's just really important to understand the value of what we can do here.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things we talk about with policymakers is this investment in, yes, the well-being of kids, and also in equipping them to be able to face the challenges that we've created as a society. We need students that are environmentally literate. We need students that are socially compassionate and are able to build community to address some of these large systemic problems that their generations will be facing.
I agree. I mean, this is a way to stop that cycle. This is a way to interrupt, this system that continues to promote educational disparity. And so when we're saying, look, we're going to provide this transformative experience and this inclusive experience for all students, then you're increasing the access. And so for me, again, I think I just go back to saying, it is so vital that we do this. I would say it's a moral imperative that we do this, we are investing not just in this one kid's experience, but in our shared collective future. And so we're all in this together. And when we pass laws and when we provide resources that we actually need, it's going to have a return that benefits everyone and our environment. So it's like a triple win in my opinion. So,
Catey, tell me a little bit about Tremont. Tell me about what makes it special, and tell me a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah. Well, we are very fortunate to be a park partner. So we are an environmental ed center, an outdoor school in the national park. And it's fantastic. We have a big river that goes through the campus, and we're able to just kick kids outside. It's the salamander capital of the world. And so oftentimes they're out just investigating the world around them. It's a really, really wonderful and special place and special part of the world. And I'm just so happy to be able to welcome people into that space.
Yeah. So Are some of your students, is this the first time they've been in a national park
Yeah.
when they come to you?
Yeah, it's amazing. We have kids that will come from the nearby communities who have never been in the national park before. We are in East Tennessee, but we serve over 13 states. We have entire school districts coming from St. Louis. They will drive 13 hours with 3 charter buses, and they come and drive overnight, arrive on our campus, and just are in awe of the mountains around them. So, we serve a lot of different school groups. We have adult programs, workshops for photography groups, all sorts of different things. And it's really a way that we, just quite simply connect people to nature.
So I understand you have a living building challenge project underway.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what is a living building?
Yeah, so we're working on the Living Building Project, which for us, it's a performance-based certification process. It says, how are you going to build a building that uses energy responsibly? So it's generating more electricity than you use. It's saying, how are we being responsible with the water? So, using water responsibly, minimizing the consumption, and putting clean water back into the watershed. It's also about the materials and making sure that you're using them, as locally sourced as possible, but also responsibly sourced. So it's a really unique way. And what I love about the Living Building Challenge is they use the metaphor of a flower. So there's 7 different petals. And as you work to achieve those petals, you're taking into account the place that you are and the resources that you have and the people that you're serving and the impact that you have. So it's a really fantastic thing. And for an outdoor school, I think it's really appropriate because it's allowing us to do our work better.
Catey, anytime I get the opportunity to sit with an outdoor school leader, like I got to hear a story. Tell me about, just give me a story from Tremont.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I have a lot of stories, but one that sticks up in my mind is a young woman named Keela. And she was from Knoxville, urban Knoxville, and grew up there. I live there now. And so I understand her kind of daily experience, but she came to the park. And it was the first time she'd come to the national park, and they went up and did a night trip up to what's formerly known as Clingman's Dome, now known as Kuohi. And they were up there, and it was the first time she saw the Milky Way. So they saw shooting stars. Right. It was a completely new world. Yeah. And she came back, and she, had gone home and told her mom about this experience. And her mom said, "Girl, that done changed you." And just the way she said that, and her mom was like, "I don't know what happened to you up there, but something happened." Well, the rest of the story is Keela came back. She came back and was a staff for us the following summer. And she said, "I would have never thought that I would have done this. If you had asked me, I would have said, I don't do nature." And she was like, "But now I'm so curious about this. I'm invested in this. I want to do this, and I want to share that experience for others." So she was a counselor. She spent her days bringing 5th graders to have the same experience that she had had and sharing that with them. For me, it just speaks to not only the singular experience that the kids can have that can transform their lives, right, but also the ripple effects. Yep. And when they come back and they continue to grow and deepen their connection, I start to look around and look at the staff that have facilitated that experience. And I'm so proud and just so grateful to be a witness to that and to help create those experiences for so many kids. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it is a special experience when you get to see those transformations in a student, but then also see how they transform their peers, their community, those 5th graders.
When kids get on the bus and they go home, that the experience isn't ending there. For some, it's just starting. So it's really just, I love what I do. I know that I can feel the same talking with you. And when we get around, our peers and who have such similar experiences and stories, it's so affirming. And it just knows, or it helps me understand that what we're doing is big and powerful. And it's just amazing to be a part of.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is such a privilege we get to be able to, as you said, bear witness to these transformations and be a part of that. Yeah. So I thank you for sharing that. I thank you for spending this time with us today and being on the North Bay podcast. That's a wrap for this episode of the North Bay podcast. But remember, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Outdoor learning is a movement, and we all have a role to play in making sure every student no matter where they are, has access to the life-changing benefits of learning in nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe, like, and share the podcast with others who believe in the power of learning beyond the classroom. And remember, outdoor school shouldn't be a privilege for the few, but rather a right for every student. See you next time.